Welcome to week 3 of the SOAR Show. Hey, hope you're doing well. I think this week is maybe the most exciting week of the whole program, at least of the studies. But certainly so far it's the most exciting, and so I'm really interested in getting right into this. And I'm going to do this video a little bit differently than the past ones. I'm going to do a little role playing where I say what you might say. But before I do that, let me talk about this quick write. So the quick write is about injustice. So you say the book is called Just Mercy, and the author Bryan Stevenson gives all his effort to stand up for justice. This is needed because of many injustices that Stevenson has become aware of. So you might want to talk a minute about what are injustices, right? Unfairness. What do you know in the world that's unfair? Now, we've kind of pushed the envelope on this a bit. I think this is certainly not the first time they've been asked to write about issues or injustice or whatever. And students are coming at different levels of knowledge and of concern and all of that. One thing you can alert students to with this prompt: what injustices are you aware of? There may be a bunch. There may be things they know about at school, ways people are treated unfairly. That's interesting. Talk about that. But they're also reading this book, and Bryan Stevenson has definitely talked about specific kinds of injustice. So racial disparities between those who, the people who are executed by the state are much more likely to be given the death sentence if you're an African American man than if you're anyone else. Okay, that's a horrid thing to be aware of. Mass incarceration, the idea that people are in prison for nonviolent crimes, sometimes things they did as juveniles. All this stuff is in this book, and you've been talking about it. So they could write about any of that. But the writing gets the juices flowing, and then you talk a little bit. So share something about injustice. What concerns you? What concerns you in this book? What concerns you outside the book? What do you want to know more about? Here I give you some thoughts. You may wind up with some thorny issues, some hot topics that are currently debated, and so it may be that scholars come with differing opinions. And so the reason I put this in here, they have freedom of speech, right? So we can disagree about things, but also so that you're kind of aware of how to take care of and empower those who may be affected by what someone else would say. So you kind of have the gentle thing of saying, well, maybe this comes from your experience and someone else has experienced something different. Just a way to think about how to navigate if that's the case. I've heard your discussions, pieces of them at least, and they sound really, really good, by the way. So I like what's going on as far as what I hear from the discussion groups. Okay. So now we're going to do an activity. I'll give you a piece of poster board, and this will continue on for the next couple weeks. So if you don't get everything down this time, it's okay. But I want to start actually listing injustices. You start thinking about injustices. So here's how I might approach this. So we've been talking about injustice, and in this chapter 3, Walter Macmillan suffers some injustices. He's treated very unfairly in various ways. Let's see if we can name some of the specific ways that Walter Macmillan was treated unfairly. And we give some time, and students can look back on 46, 47, 48, and give them a chance. You don't have to hurry this, but a few minutes if they're not coming up with something. Do you see something specific on maybe bottom of 46, early 47? What else do you see on 47? Think about when Walter Macmillan was arrested. Did the sheriff do anything or say anything that was unjust or unjust? So get some responses here. List them. Keep space because you're going to have more weeks with this. This is just the first week of having this poster board. Okay? Moving on. What do you know about Yellow Mama? They're not sure. Page 53. Let's see if we can find out who or what Yellow Mama was. If they say the electric chair, well, how did the electric chair get the name Yellow Mama? what about the prisoners who named Yellow Mama, the people on death row who are present when someone is walked to the electric chair? Tell us about their experience. Now here's an interesting thought, and scholars may not be aware of this. McMillan and Tate were put on death row before a trial. They were held there. So scholars may think prison and jail are all the same. I don't know. It may depend on their experience, their family, something like this, right? But they may think prison and jail are all the same deal. No. So you have clarity here. Jail would be like someone gets arrested and they're being held, and they usually, a bond is set where they can, get out on bail for this much money, and which gets repaid once they show back up in court, right? So that's the normal thing. Prison is when people have been sentenced, and death row is not for any prisoner. It's for people who've been sentenced to death. So here you have Walter McMillan and Tate, right? And that comes in really important because it's kind of a psychological deal with Tate. Before they are tried, put or held on death row. Why did this happen? And then you get 64. So let's talk about the trial comes. What is a verdict? And who comes up with a verdict? And what did the jury decide? What was their verdict? Why do you think they came to this verdict? On what basis? Getting back here then to capital punishment. So Stevenson talks about capital punishment quite a bit in the book. It's the death penalty. We've talked about that a little bit. Look at something Stevenson said on page 71. Let's find that together. Believing in capital punishment was one thing, but the realities of systematically killing someone who is not a threat are completely different. Believing in capital punishment. What's that mean to believe in capital punishment? Oh, you think it's maybe a good idea, maybe justify the state has the right to kill, certain people, right? So what I want to do here is I'm stepping back out to talk to you now, the leader. I want to avoid just the ideological debate. Should we have capital punishment? You could do that, but I suggest skip that. Stevenson says it's one thing to believe in it, but it's another thing to see how someone who Stevenson knew was not a threat to society is systematically put through this process to kill them. So the question here is, put yourself in Stevenson's shoes. Put yourself in McMillan's shoes when he's on death row being held. How would those experiences change your mind, knowing people? Maybe knowing people who are innocent, or knowing people aren't going to go back out and commit violent crime because they haven't committed violent crime. People who have been sentenced, maybe who had mental illnesses and things like this. How do those experiences change their views? And might that change your view if you had those experiences? Of course, they may not believe in it, but anyway, you see where I'm going with that. Okay, last thing I need to get to. This is really important. Okay, so save some time for this. If you need to cut some stuff up here on the list, cool, because you'll have more time to list. But here we're going to do some role play, so you need to gear the scholars up for the role play. We're looking in chapter 5, okay, right here, and we have the opportunity where Stevenson meets people in McMillan's family, and there's other people here, I think 2 that aren't in McMillan's family, and they're actually not. All these people are not together. So in the book, so depending on which people get selected, you're kind of creating a conversation. But you can look and see what these people did say. What did they say to Stevenson? What did they say to each other when they met Stevenson? What were their comments? And think about what kind of conversation they would have. Minnie is Walter's wife, right? Jackie, his daughter, that's one notoriously mentioned, is in college. Armelia Hand has quite a big role in these pages here, 78 and 79. So that's a good character, kind of an elder among the community. Sam Crook wasn't in this meeting. He's a really interesting character, though. So my suggestion is for you, the leader, know something about these characters. Help the students, the scholars, think about these characters, what they might say, what they're feeling, what they experience. What was it like for the people who were there and actually knew? Walter McMillan was frying fish when the murder happened. We saw him, and yet our testimony's not believed. What does that mean? So get them to do a little research, think about what they're going to say to one another, and then have a conversation. And there's my phone, so have a great week.